Hi, how are you? Before I talk about anything about any dream, we have something a little bit more important at first. So I need you to say hello to Alexander the Great. Are you saying hello? Show him some love. Anywho, let's get down to business. I have some interesting things to tell you. Um, well, the first thing is I don't know if it has anything to do with dreams or not. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's related to some sightings I've had over the years. Um, since about 2015, I've been seeing this white owl. Um, I've seen it at the bare minimum a dozen times, at most 20, 30 times. I've seen this owl all over the place. I've seen it everywhere in the county that I travel to. I've seen it in places that I shouldn't have seen it, and I swear it is the same white owl. The point why I'm bringing this up right now is I haven't seen it in a very long time, at least over a year. So the last time that I saw it was the most peculiar time and the strangest setting that it could possibly be. It was right outside my door, which I'll show you in a moment. As I was coming home from work, it flies by around this corner and then flies no more than 3 feet away from me, looks me directly in the eyes, and flies off. So quite literally right here. Right over there as I was walking home. It flew, looked at me right in the eyes, flew off. Very large white owl. Very, very large, completely white. Does not have any brown, nothing on it. Just a white, gorgeous, stunningly beautiful, big owl. I haven't seen it in over a year. I think the last time I saw it was probably the beginning of last year, so January 2018, something like that. Until a few days ago, until December 10th, I was on break at work, and I went over to a secluded area near a gas station, a wooded area, and I'm just looking at the skyline, and it comes up, it flies about 5 feet away from me, looks directly into my eyes again, makes 3 circles over me, and flies off towards the west. Now, what's peculiar about this owl is that we don't have any species of owl that resemble that sort of owl in San Diego County. We have the western owl and the barn owl. They're much smaller. I've seen plenty of those as well. I've seen plenty of regular owls. They're usually brown, they're usually small. This one was enormous. I suppose it might have migrated from somewhere, flown down here. I don't know. I find this to be very strange because of just how many times I would see this particular type of owl if it's not the same owl. Not only that, the whole context of the situation just doesn't make a whole lot of sense if it's simply a coincidence. I've seen this thing 80 miles away from here and right by my door. So take it however you want to. Is it mystical? Is it strange? To me it is. To me, it bothers me because I don't understand the meaning, what's behind it. I do feel like it is something spiritual, that is something significant, that does have meaning. Anyway, enough about owls. Let's get to the dream. So this dream is very hard to describe. Why? Because it is, the only way I could describe it is semi-lucid. So it's not that I was aware that I was in the dream and I was able to control it. It wasn't like that, but it was so vivid and so real that I was semi-lucid in it, that I was somewhat aware of the situation. I knew the location of where I was located. I knew the context of the situation. I knew what was happening, and I knew what had to be done to resolve a certain problem. So in that case, it would be somewhat of a lucid dream. So it's almost like a whole lifetime was lived inside this dream. First thing I remember is that I'm in a church, a religious type setting, where I'm sitting in a pew and there's a group of people on stage that are all wearing these white gowns, and they have these completely ridiculous looking triangular hats on with this blue emblem on it. And one of them is my mother, who's, at least she took the form of my mother in the dream. And she was holding a large book in her hands. And this book also had this blue logo, this emblem on it. And I remember exactly what this emblem looks like. It looked like a military insignia that you would see here, like a blue circle with a triangle inside it, something like that. I don't know if there are any religious orders that have such a symbol, but that's what the book had on it. And she was giving this speech on stage in this sort of religious cult-like setting. The whole atmosphere, the environment was very cult-like in general. And she was just in total adoration. Like, she just admired this book. Like, she was just exalted, like, loved this book. And she just was almost in tears over it. And there's the group of people behind her were just standing there in kind of like a formation with their ridiculous hats on. They, I hate to say it, but they kind of look like the KKK. They kind of had these pointed hats on, like the KKK had. But I don't think it has anything to do with that whatsoever, though. So don't worry about that. This is another dimension. This is another parallel Earth, and I'll explain that later. So I kind of swivel around in my life. I kind of find myself in classroom settings. These are very different sort of classrooms. I'm in auditoriums, very large auditoriums with lots of kids, sort of growing up. And I find myself in a city, and I knew exactly where it was somehow in this dream. I knew that it was Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Not in this dimension. So, not here, because it was very different. I'm familiar with what Rio looks like. I've seen many documentaries. I've seen many pictures, Google Earth. I know what Rio looks like. It looked very different. I was in the city. Everything was different. The buildings there were this very beautiful emerald color, most of them. This emerald glassy, shiny glass. It was like shiny glass, most of the buildings. And there was like this ocean blue, and then there's this emerald green. Kind of like, coincidentally, kind of like these things right up here, actually, sort of. And so I'm in this city. There's these it looks very much like here in many ways. There are cars, there are people walking around on sidewalks. I remember one thing distinctly is that the asphalt, or whatever they used to pave the roads, was not like your standard concrete color, but rather kind of this grayish, opaque, greenish color, and it was very symmetrical, and it had this very mathematic straightness to everything. And actually the buildings were not like that at all, which is funny. The buildings were actually very kind of oval like, and they had these bends and curves, and they didn't have this sort of rigidity like the streets did. And I saw these like escalator, not escalator, like these people moving machines all over the place that would kind of bridge over these streets, and the people would just stand there and they would be moving across into different buildings and stuff. There was like freeways and highways for cars, and I had a car of my own. It was a car I actually had in real life. It was a black Mustang. My favorite car, the best car I ever had, a black 1998 Ford Mustang. I love that thing. And that was the exact same car in the dream, like in absolute detail, is the same flipping car. And I was driving it. I was living my life, and I began to get this understanding that there was something going on in this city, not in the city, but off the coastline. But I'll get to that. So I'm going to work in my car, in my Mustang, and I work in an office, and there's computers. I see my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law there. I mean, they're formed the way they look like here. And they're also working with me in this office setting and computers. And I knew that I was a scientist. They were scientists. We were working on something very important, and I was actually seeing it on the screens. The computer technology looked very similar to here. It actually didn't even look as advanced as here. Like, it looked like computers you would see like in 2003, 2, something like that. And by the way, my brother and sister-in-law are not scientists in real life unless you consider accounting a science. I don't know. But we were observing this anomaly off the coastline, right off the coastline of the city, the parallel version of Rio de Janeiro. It's a few miles off the coastline, and there's something bubbling beneath the surface. There's something going on that's causing a lot of turmoil and a lot of energy being released from beneath the surface of the water. And we're trying to figure it out, and we're frustrated. And I'm kind of like living my life in this dream, going to work every day, staring at these screens, and we're starting to get really frustrated because we can't our instruments can't measure what exactly it is that's taking place. So we started going out on helicopter, or what looked like helicopters. This very white, shiny helicopter rides out into this anomalous area off the coast. We would observe it, and it looked like a whirlpool. It was swirling, a massive whirlpool. I mean, a mile, 2 miles wide, and it was just swirling and swirling, and we would just observe it. And it was starting to grow bigger, as my sense that I was getting, like this whirlpool was just getting bigger and bigger. And things just kind of kept moving on from there until the event happened, which is the same event I have in many, many dreams. Many dreams I have giant tsunamis, giant waves, things of that nature. And we're starting to panic, and suddenly, bam, this whirlpool kind of exploded, or something came out of the ocean, kind of like a volcano or something. Exploded, a giant wave. Everything became like in slow motion. I was in my Mustang driving on the highway, and it came very slowly, this massive wave, and everything was frozen. My sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, just frozen in place, and we're just staring at the wave. And it crashed through the building that we were working at, an emerald color building. And I remember the water going through the other side, very clearly through the other side of the windows. And it was repeating over and over again. I kept seeing this over and over again, multiple times. And like it just bam, 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 the same. It was like a broken record, looping and looping and looping. And the water came over, and the water descended down onto where we were on the street. And as soon as it approached me, I woke up. Peculiar. I can't even describe how many dreams I've had with tsunamis. Anyway, that'll be all for the day. I had some dreams last night as well. I don't really feel like they're really worthy of sharing. They were rather interesting, but nothing particularly that cool. So I hope you like this one. Very, very vivid dream. Semi-lucid, if that even makes any sense. If that even exists. I felt that's what it was. Please tell me if you guys had any dreams where you had the same situation. You're semi-lucid. You're aware of what's going on. You know the situation. You have a problem to solve. Bye, and don't forget to say bye to the hamster.